welcome to InfoFire, the Fireside chat series from Information Matters. Each episode is a conversation between an expert and a host. I am Shalini R, your host for this series. I have had the privilege of interacting with scholars across disciplines and around the world in meetings, workshops, and conferences that I either attended or organized on a variety of topics such as digital libraries, iSchools, ICT for development. Believing in the power of digital technologies to transform the information environment, I have initiated many projects such as HyperCAD, hypertext-based computer-aided learning systems, Vidyanidhi Digital Library, Mickey Gang, UN for IM, United Nations for Information Management, Internet Safari, to name a few. In today's episode, I am in conversation with Dr. Ricardo Baeza-Yates, who is the Director of Research and Professor at the Institute for Experiential AI, Northeastern University, Silicon Valley, California, USA. Dr. Baeza-Yates is a renowned expert in search, data mining, and data science, and a research innovator too. He is a full professor part-time at the Department of Information and Communication Technologies of Universitat Pompeu Fabra, Barcelona, Catalunya, Spain since the year 2006. He is also again part-time full professor at the Department of Computing Sciences, Universidad de Chile, Santiago, Chile since 1989. He is a consultant for startups, companies, and venture capital in Brazil, Chile, Mexico, Spain, and USA, as well as international organizations such as United Nations and the Inter-American Development Bank. He is a member of many committees and subcommittees such as the Global Partnership of AI Data Governance Working Group, Spain's Advisory Council of AI, Catalunya's AI Observatory Board, ACM's Policy Technology Subcommittee in AI and Algorithms, Inter-American Development Bank's Advisory Committees, FAIR AI. He was also Vice President of Research at Yahoo Labs from 2006 to 16, and he brings experience as research manager and technical lead in applied projects on web search, usage data mining, and web advertising. He is the co-author of the most used and cited textbook on search concepts and technology entitled Modern Information Retrieval, which has received more than 20,000 citations. He has won the 2012 ACCENT's Best Information Science Book Award for the second edition of his book, Modern Information Retrieval. He is Fellow of the ACM as well as IEEE. Hello, welcome to InfoFire, the Fireside chat series from Information Matters. The topic of our conversation today is large language models and their limitations. Language technologies are a boon as well as a bane to humankind. Languages help us articulate our thoughts, ideas, and feelings, and thus laid the foundation of our civilization. They also divided the human civilization, just as the story of Tower of Babel goes. Our guest today is Dr. Ricardo Baeza-Yates, Director of Research and Research Professor at the Institute of Experiential AI, Northeastern University, Silicon Valley, California. He is also a consultant to startups and other organizations, particularly in responsible AI. Hi, Ricardo. Welcome to InfoFire. We are happy and honored to have you, a renowned expert in the field of search, data mining, and data science, and also a research innovator with us today to chat about large language models, their power, as well as their limitations. The science of extraction of information from large textual data has changed dramatically over the last decade. The very field has changed from text mining to natural language processing, and also the key driver of this change has been the methodology, and particularly the large language models, which aim to distill insights and information from large textual data and apply to various areas, starting with, for example, automatic text generation, or it could be part of speech tagging, or it could be speech recognition, OCR, sentiment analysis, and all of that. In fact, some people believe that this is the closest that we have got to AI, right? But for most commoners, such as me, for example, the most common encounter that we have with language models is when we key in a couple of words into the search box of Google or any other search engine, and it prompts us with auto completion, query auto completion, which sometimes is amazing, sometimes is also annoying. The other encounter that I can think of that we have with language models is when we have this annoying experience with the so called cutting edge chatbots, with which you really cannot have a decent conversation. So, Ricardo, please explain to our audience what is language models and also how they work.
Thank you, Shalini, for the invitation to be here. So language models are basically probabilistic representations of language that are built using very large neural networks, so what we call deep learning. And the difference with the first one that were called word embeddings, where you try to map every word to a very large vector space. In this case, the large language models have started to take in account the whole context of the sentence. So it's not only about a single word; it's about the context of that word in between many other words, and that is looks like it's you understand much more in between quotes because you are capturing much larger patterns, and then you learn those patterns. But basically, it's a way to learn patterns from large bodies of language. We're talking about the whole web, so we're talking about trillions of words.
So, there are different language models, right? So, what are the differences, or what are the categories of these different models?
Yeah, so I would say the most famous one from the beginning was BERT, that was done by Google in 2018. Um, that model has 340 million parameters. And the main difference today is mainly how large you build the model, so how many parameters you have. So today, I guess the winner will be one that was done in China in 2021, so last year, that has 10 trillion parameters. So basically, the number of parameters have grown exponentially in 3 years, and now it's very close to, I would say, the same order of magnitude of the size of the text that you are learning. You need to be very careful not to overfit the model. So at the beginning was just using brute force. So basically, more and more layers, more and more data, more and more computation. But today there have been some improvements. For example, percent of the energy of GPT-3, which is the most famous one that OpenAI published in 2020, and that one that also basically allows you to use it, and they have a model, like a business model, where you pay for word generated. So basically you have to pay about 6 cents of a dollar for each word you generate, so you can use it for chatbot, as you said. Using language models for complete are very good techniques for complete queries, because that's only based on queries. So the model from a text model will be like a model. So I don't know if language models work so well for query completion, but that certainly is a possible application.
So the most talked about, you can say, the model or the technology has been the GPT-3, right? One of them, GPT-3.
Yes.
In fact, can you sort of elaborate on the transformer architecture that has changed this whole language model?
So 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 basically, it's a combination of different layers in the neural network that it's very hard to explain it for someone that doesn't know how are these architectures. But for example, the one important thing is um, the attention. So basically, how you put attention in certain part of the text, and then you need to say how much context um, you want. But basically, attention is the main thing. So you basically look at one part of the text. At the beginning, the attention was used only for for what was say to the right of, but now it's used to the. They at the beginning they used this attention in a fixed window, and now basically they are using it in infinitely. So basically, you are in some sense taking the whole context in account, but of course, letters that are that are near the one that you are looking at, they have more weight than, for example, one that is very far away. So that you can think it's like a fish eye view of the text. That will be a good metaphor. You are looking something well in the center, but also you are looking at the rest.
So with this fish eye view and the context, you think that these large language models have been able to overcome some of the limitations of the earlier model?
Well, this is like the limit. The main limitation is that basically you are not understanding the semantics of the text really. So you are only learning patterns.
Yeah.
It's like a stochastic parrot, as in the famous paper
Yeah.
by Bender, Gabru, Macmillan, and Mitchell. So I would say that it's like in search. In search, with using a simple vector model, you cover 90% of the of the cases, and then the other 10% is very hard because it's not only about syntax; it's about semantics. Here, I think the same. So this attention idea uh, made able to advance from, let's say, from 90 to 95%. So it was a big jump. However, still you have this 5% that you cannot really understand, and then you make mistakes that the human will never make. For example, you put words that don't make sense in the context of what you are writing.
So it's good that you brought about this, the word or the term stochastic parrots, because some people say trace the origin of these models to the early, that is in the 1940s, the Shannon's theory of information, where he started this, Markov chain and other kinds of models. Do you agree with that view, that that's where it started? Because the stochastic model started somewhere there, right?
Yes, in some sense started there. So I would say that this is just advanced statistics. So like in machine learning, we are using more advanced statistics, but still we are not capturing the knowledge, the semantics in 100%. So basically, it looks like you capture the semantics. So it's like the parrot. The parrot will say something that makes sense, but sometimes will say something that makes sense in a moment that doesn't make sense. Like you will say, "Okay, a good day," that will make sense in the morning, but will not make sense in the night. But of course, the sentence is correct, and this is the problem. So you basically you repeat things that you have learned, but you don't understand why it was said at that time and what was the context and the motive. And that's very important limitation of machine learning in general. You cannot capture everything in data. So the context is not captured by data. What is happening right now cannot be captured by data because it's happening right now. So you typically capture the past, but not the present, and not things that you cannot encode in data. So there are many human things that are very hard to encode in data.
So, according to you, the context and the semantics and the sentiment, these are the challenges, would you say, of the language models?
I would say that these are the major challenges, but there are other challenges. So, for example, also text encodes bias, social biases.
Yes.
So you have gender bias, racial bias, and so on. Even there's a very interesting paper that show anti-Muslim bias, where completions that involve Muslims were 4 times more violent than Christians, and for example, the less violent people were the Buddhists and the atheists. So in some sense, like an order of violence per religion based on what the news write, because this is basically based on news. All other problems are that I think that not all languages will have the same opportunities. So, for example, in India, I believe you have 23 official languages,
Yeah.
and for those, and I think of you have 450 languages, so
Yes, suppose.
like about 5% of the languages are official, but of course they are spoken by a large number of the population, more than 90%. But I did some research before because of another project, and I found that about 11 of them, so half of them, had linguistic resources. And then maybe a similar number will have enough text to be able to train a language model. So basically, this is like 2.5% of languages that are spoken in India will have the opportunity to have a chatbot built on this technology. So this is like in some sense enlarging the gap, the technological gap between some languages and others.
See, many of these, talking about Indian languages, for example, we do not have particularly resources because of the script issue. That is, not all of these languages have their own script. That's one. And thereby, if it's possible, in the next one, to get from oral to that is speech recognition and convert them into records, maybe, the textual data set could increase, isn't it? If you
Yes, you
can
can always
capture
do.
that.
Yeah, you can do a speech to text, and also you can do for these difficult scripts, you can do specialized optical character recognition
Yes.
to basically generate text. But I think that the problem is not there. The problem is how much text you can generate. So how much oral records you can capture. You need to start right away having people to tell stories to you and capture this right now. But imagine today we have petabytes and more of text in English and say Mandarin and the top languages in the world. So you need to play catch up, but it's a catch up that is very, very long.
No, that's it. So you have been a strong votary of this bias issue in language models or in, machine learning as well as data science, etc. So both, whether it's gender bias, racial bias, religion bias, or other kinds of biases. So what, according to you, how you can actually confront these and manage these problems? Are there any strategies that we can think of or something that can be done?
Well, when people started to find, for example, in GPT-3, which is the most publicly available model so far, and basically found these biases, and there are many papers now, research papers on this type of problems. Mm-hmm. For example, GPT-3 did a version last January, so very recently, 2 months ago, one smaller model that's called Instruct GPT that has only 1.3 billion parameters. And the main idea of that model was to basically mitigate bias. So basically try to remove all these issues. And then I don't remember who, a woman recently wrote a blog checking, let's see if that was true or not. And basically she found many examples where where there was a still bias. For example, one example I like is that she said that the seed sentence will be "every man wonders." So this is the seed, and then the model will continue this with why he was born into this world and what his life is for. So a very philosophical sentence. But then she said, okay, let's say every woman wonders, and then the text generated what it would like to be a man. What is really you have a gender
It's
issue
really
problem.
probably it is written by men.
Exactly.
I mean,
Well,
it
this
is,
is
right?
yeah, this is one
I
of the
don't think
problems.
as a woman, I wouldn't think of what it would be like. I mean, I would be as philosophical as men are or as something else, right?
Exactly, and you said you say a reason that is very important. So even if you remove all explicit bias, most of the text probably was is written by men, so the majority. So you have a lot of implicit bias that is very hard to catch, especially when you learn patterns and you put them together, right? Because maybe it's a novel, and in a novel, old novel, there was a sexist, and that's normal at that time. Maybe someone wrote that sentence, like a woman said that, but that was said written by a man. So of course it had this stereotype, and this is the problem. So you can remove explicit bias, but there are implicit bias, and also there are unknown biases. For example, typically you have this intersectional problem, which is not, let's say you have a caste bias in India, and also you have, let's say, a gender bias, but now you have the intersection of this woman of this caste will have a different bias, and we cannot check all possible intersections, all possible subsets of, let's say, dimensions of bias in text. It's impossible. And one of the problems is that the original bias is that we have this cognitive bias to categorize things, to put things in category. Like, for example, race. The color of your skin is a continuous variable. Where we put the divisions doesn't make any sense. And the same we are doing with many other things that now we are changing that because these things are not categorical and they are not binary like for example gender and so on. So we are well, we are not exactly continuous variable, but DNA is like a very large space of possibilities, and this is almost continuous. And we always we're trying to characterize the DNA of people in some a fixed number of boxes, and this is the beginning of the problem. So that we have this, and I understand why. So it's like we would like to organize things, like a librarian putting things, the topics, and we try to do the same with people, and then we fail, and because we shouldn't do that. So we shouldn't try to put people in boxes.
True. See, one other problem challenge that is posed by this language models are particularly the automatic generation of text is also the amplification of some of the negative or the things like hate speech and kind of thing, right? Because automatically it is generating text. In fact, I am reminded of a headline in the Telegraph paper in 2020. It said, "Forget deep fakes. We should be very worried about AI-generated text after the announcement of GPT-3." So, and Gartner, for example, predicts that if current trends continue, the majority of the people in developing countries, I don't know where they think it is developing countries only, but anyway, it says developing countries will see false rather than true information by 2022. We are already in 2022. So there is this, this is a general, I would say, societal problem of dealing with disinformation, misinformation, fake news, etc. And then AI is adding to it. That is, language models are adding to it by actually, regenerating or generating the text again and again. So that's a serious problem. So how would AI people like you would think of, addressing that?
That's, I guess, the hardest problem we have today, especially when you have political conflicts.
Yes.
So I'm not talking about Ukraine. So many people don't know that we have 23 active wars in the right now, and we have a bias to think only in the ones that matter to us. Some people say affinity because they are close geographically or they are same color, but at the end we should take care of all of them the same, especially if they involve developing countries. So let me, before I answer the question, I think I'm more worried. I'm more worried about the video fakes and not text fakes, because I think video is just, for example, a person talking, and you have the right person talking, is very syntactic. So you don't care about the context, about the semantics. So you can generate, say, a president saying something, and will be very hard to you to distinguish that it's not really the president. It's just everything is fake. Or so this is a worry today to be more than text, because with language, as we have been discussing, you need to do it very well to not make a mistake where you say, okay, I got you. This is not true because you use this word in a context that no one human will use it, for example. So it's easier to catch something like that, but our eyes, I think, they are not that good. So maybe there are some small mistakes in the video, but we don't see them. So I have seen lately things that are really amazing where a person can just basically record some audio, and then a system will basically generate his face talking, and it maybe not his face, the face that any other person with the voice of that person talking. So then it's we are like duped. Like we will be very hard to know what is real or not. The only possibility will be to basically know that you trust the source. But today, even very trustable sources have published fake news, because they are also, in some sense, deceived by other sources. And we're talking about famous newspapers. They also have some portion, smaller than others, of fake news. So really, solving this problem is very, very hard. I think we need AI to fight AI. So basically, it's not us who will detect this problem. We'll need to have models that are basically what is called like adversarial AI in some sense, but adversarial not to basically make the models fail, is to basically find that these models are not human, they are artificial. So at some point we need to distinguish what is artificial, what is fake, and what is human. But I think will be hard because basically at the end it's like fighting with the same tool at the same time. So basically you will get a tie. You cannot win that. It's like playing with yourself. It's like fighting yourself. It's very hard to do that.
See, I've also been a strong proponent of ethical AI. In fact, that's what you are, helping other organizations, startups do that as well. So, how confident are you about succeeding in your efforts in this ethical AI?
Yeah. So first, I prefer not to use ethical AI, because that is like a bit anthropomorphic bias where we assign a human characteristics to a machine. So I prefer to talk about AI ethics. So
Yes.
so I prefer not to say like ethical AI or just AI or trustful AI, because basically you are basically anthropomorphizing the technology, and I think it's good to have this difference. I think it's similar to the problem of bias. Um, so one solution we haven't discussed it. I forgot to mention it. One solution I believe is that we need hybrid systems. So basically to combine these amazing language models to basically classic AIs like symbolic AI, so knowledge bases, doing logic inferences. So try to understand the semantics, at least partially, and people that have done natural language processing technology in the past understand what that means. Because in many ways, this technology is rediscovering things that we already know, right? For example, when we parse a sentence, we know which is a verb, but these models don't use this information. So part of the speech is really not used in these things. But if we use what we already know about language, I think we can do much better than today. So this will be one step also to fight disinformation and so on. And for ethics, I believe technology doesn't solve the problems that we have. So that's what an ethicist will say is techno-solutionism. So basically, believing that technology will solve the social problems we have. No, the only way to solve the social problems we have is to solve it at the human level, and then we can use technology to do something better. Of course, technology can help. For example, technology can help pointing us these problems, pointing us when we're biased, pointing us when we are not ethical, and so on. But for example, as I think it's the Dave Lauer put in an interesting paper, it says we cannot have AI ethics if we don't have ethics. So we should start with us. So first we need to get rid of most bias. Then we need to have ethics, and then I can continue on things that we need to do with governments, with institutions, with people all over the world, because this is a world problem. Of course, there are differences of ethics between cultures, but I will believe the negative thing is everywhere. So it's like we need to have a problem like in politics, in business, to improve ethics, because otherwise we cannot have AI ethics.
See, well, you mentioned doomsday. Well, I am also not a doomsday prepper type of a person, but still,
I'm not either.
Yeah, I know you mentioned it. So I still feel compelled to quote celebrated physicist Stephen Hawking, who said at a Web Summit conference in Lisbon just before his death, I quote, "Success in creating effective AI could be the biggest event in the history of our civilization or the worst. We just don't know. So we cannot know if we will be definitely or infinitely helped by AI or ignored by it and sidelined or conceivably destroyed by it. So which one do you think was most likely to happen?"
I don't like to do predictions. I prefer to construct the future, like Alan Kay said. So I would say that right now we are going on the wrong way, because we have this metaphor of just do it until it breaks, like the typical big internet company motto. And the problem that when you break it, then you try to improve it. But when breaking it means like killing a woman with an autonomous car, like happened with Uber in 2018, that's the problem. We are stopping when it's too late, and we need to. And there, as I said, ethics is always running behind technology, and only like catches up a little when a problem happens, but then we keep going. And this is something that has happened in history many times. So we had many people dying because of chemical weapons in the First World War to ban that. Then we had to have 2 cities obliterated in Japan to ban, for example, atomic bombs, and we still have this thing hanging, right? It's like a soft ban, and we need to wait for more problems. In the case of AI, and in the case of AI, if we use this, I don't like this word metaphors, but it is more like a bomb that spreads all over. It's not like in a single place. So gender bias spreads all over, and the same with other problems. So we need to think more about what we do before doing it. So this will be to do ethics assessments before doing something, before saying, should we use AI to decide, for example, if a person will leave prison or not? For me, the answer is no. Ethically is no. We cannot decide, a machine cannot decide the life of a human, and so on. And there are many problems where today we are deciding life of humans using AI. Now, if we change the focus and think before I break it, so think a lot, do ethical assessments, I think we can switch to the right direction. But we are maybe in the first part of trying to bend the direction. I don't know if we'll succeed. I hope we succeed like in the past, but not at the cost of the past, because that's what we don't learn. And men, and I'm here saying men on purpose, don't learn from history. Okay?
Thank you. On that positive, optimistic note, I would like to thank you for your time and giving us your insight. And let us hope, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of all of us, that AI ethics will prevail, and the trade-off is for the betterment of the society, for all of us, for every one of us. It's a more open and inclusive society that we are going to see in the next 5 or even 50 years. We may not be here, but hopefully, like the atom bomb, we have to learn from it, right? And then not repeat
Yes.
it. The past is only, I mean, with any past, I would say we need to learn, embrace the past, and then not repeat the past. That's the lesson,
Yeah.
and that is true of AI or any other technology or even issues, because you mentioned about both politics and business. In a way, I would say the business and politics both have to change, because I mean, you
Yes.
work with Yahoo and you are also working with many companies. So some of these issues are also because the business models are actually in favor of the other, or the non-ethical side of the AI, or non-ethical side of the I
Yeah,
would say technology.
yeah, the incentives are in conflict. The
They're
different
in
incentives and
conflict.
they clash. They clash. Yes.
So let us hope the better sense and better people like you and others who are in this space prevail, and then we will continue to have AI, and the power of AI is used for the benefit of humankind than anything else. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Shalini.